Hello and welcome back to Dishelved with Adam White. This week we're going to discuss Elric of Melnibone by Michael Moorcock. This is the Elric Saga Volume 1. These books and short stories have been around for quite some time, since I think the early 70s, even the 60s maybe. And Saga Press is putting out 3 hardcovers that collect all the material of Elric, and this is the first volume that just came out in February. The next volume I think comes out in April, and I believe the last volume comes out in October. I could be wrong, and those are due to change. This was originally supposed to be out last December, but got held up for who knows what reason. But the 3 volumes will collect everything of Elric, and so it's a night. And since most of it's been, I guess, out of print for a while. Sorry, my computer froze up on me there for a moment. Uh, so this will be the first time it's in print in a new hardcover edition that collects everything. Let me read you what it says about it, and I'll show you the cover while I do that. In the most well-known and well-loved fantasy epics of the 20th century, the story of Elric, Emperor of the dying kingdom of Melnibone. For 100 centuries, the Melniboneans have ruled from the Dragon Isle of Imrir. Now, after years of corruption and decadence, Elric's amoral cousin Prince Yurkun, the brother of his beloved Cimmeril, sets his eyes on the ruby throne. Elric must face his treacherous cousin not as a warrior but as a sorcerer king, once again in league with the ancient gods of Melnibone, the Chaos Lords, and thus sealing his inexorable fate. Elric of Melnibone is the first volume in Michael Moorcock's incredible chronicle, which created fantasy archetypes that have echoed through the genre for generations. The beautiful, vivid illustrations by legendary artists Brom, Robert Gould, Richard Hescox, and John Picasso enrich the tale of a doomed empire and its eternal champion. Volume 1 of the Elric Saga contains the first novels of the series: Elric of Melnibone, The Fortress of the Pearl, The Sailor, The Seas of Fate, and The Weird of the White Wolf. These are stories presented in a way they have never been before published in the United States, in the order the author intended, with his preferred text. Now, it says they're presented in Michael Moorcock's preferred order, so I guess that makes it my preferred order too. It originally wasn't in this order necessarily. The stories were written out of order, kind of like if you think back to Conan and how he had his stories, just one would take place when he was king, like the first one did, and then it'd take place when he was a young thief, and then the next time he'd be, a general barbarian, and just stuff like that. So it happened out of order. This strikes me as being in order, which I would have preferred probably to read it in the order they were published, but if this is Michael Moorcock's preferred order, then that is good enough for me because he knows what he's doing. The best way I can describe this is Pulp Shakespeare. I thought a lot about it, and it has the sword and sorcery of the pulps with the high tragic drama of Shakespeare and his tragedies and dramas, his histories. The language is very accessible. It's not as difficult to read as Shakespeare is, but he writes it in a way that's very readable and very exciting, and he has all the sword and sorcery tropes that you love. And Elric is a sorcerer king. He knows how to do magic, except in order to do that, you have to either call on the elemental lords or the chaos lords, and he makes a deal with one of them to give him the power to go on. He searches for the sword Stormbringer, which steals people's souls and gives him energy. He also has to take a drug that makes him whole. He's an albino, and he has some kind of, I guess you'd call it a blood disease or something, but it makes him kind of weak. So he has to take stuff uh, to keep himself healthy, relatively. Uh, the stories in here are, the first one is Elric of Melnibone, and that's his sort of origin story, if anything else. He fights against Prince Yurkun, his cousin, and who wants to steal the throne from him. And his cousin's sister, which would also be his cousin, is also his betrothed, which, of course, is something you'd find in older material, uh, older than what this is, but uh, nowadays people wouldn't be betrothed to their first cousin, but uh, he was, and they were in love, and uh, he has to save her and try to save his kingdom from his evil cousin, and that's kind of the story of that. The next one, The Fortress of the Pearl, was written much later. I think it was like 1989 or something, so it was written much later, but it's the second one presented here. And it has kind of an Arabian Nights feel to it. He's in a desert city and goes to, he gets uh, drugged with something that both gives him strength and takes his strength. And he has to go on a quest to find this mysterious pearl that is in a fortress that virtually no one knows how to get to. And he has to save a child too that's been put into a dreaming sleep. And it has a lot of like dream walking and stuff like that. It's really cool. I found it to be a little slow compared to the first story. Like I said, it was written much later, but the last chapter before the epilogue, you get everything you want in it. He, Elric, takes care of business in a big way in that last chapter, so it makes it all worth reading. The third story, The Sailor on the Seas of Fate, and again, these also aren't, they're kind of joined short stories, if anything. They're not really a novel per se. They just have adjoining stories. So The Sailor on the Seas of Fate is a good example of that. The three stories, one of them, he goes and fights with other champions and joins with them. And I found it to be a little confusing just because I got the feeling we were supposed to know who the other champions were, which I believe there were other characters that Michael Moorcock writes about. Uh, but I didn't know who they are because I've never read Michael Moorcock before, which I know is a travesty because I'm such a fantasy fan. But like I said, it just hasn't been in print for a while. So, but then he also uh, goes on kind of a mystical ship and takes an adventure there with them. And then the last one, I can't even remember now what the last one was about, and I just finished it yesterday. But um, he, they all have to do with him being on ships. And the last story, The Weird of the White Wolf, is where he returns to Melnibone. He went on a year-long excursion to try to find new ways to make his kingdom better. And because they've been a very ruthless race, and he wants to make them more fair and more just, and he's searching for ways to do that in the other kingdoms of the lands. And the problem is that he left his Prince Coon on the throne while he did all these other things, and that was a big mistake. And it ends up, I won't say how it ends up, but it is really just the first part of his the Weird of the White Wolf story, and then the other chapters in it are kind of what happens from the fallout of it. Now I know that it's said that it had some art. This one's probably my favorite piece. I'm not sure who it's by. It might be Brom, but I really like this one. Now the other ones, there was a few other stories. There was a few other pieces of art in the middle of the book on glossy pages, and one more towards the back of the book. I like them, but I don't know if it was enough to count it as a illustrated edition or not, because I thought it should have had more illustrations. There's probably been a lot more art of Elric over the years than what they display in here, so I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. I'm looking forward to the other books, but that's all I'll say about this. Like I say, it's Pulp Shakespeare is the best way I can describe it, and I highly recommend it. If you've never read Michael Moorcock, then this is a great place to start. And like I said, they'll have it in 3 volumes. This is the first, and the next 2 come out this year too. And I think you'll enjoy them. So thanks for hanging out with me this week, and I'll see you in a week.